Welcome to week 8 of the App Collective Mastermind. This week, Nick mocks up a location-based alarm clock, I think about edge cases for tracking digital nomads, and we both discuss how to better manage ASO. So, week 8, here we are. How are you doing this week?
Week 8, doing pretty good. I feel like I had 2 travel days this past week, and I spent the weekend at a wedding up in the Peak District in the UK. So I feel like I really only had like half of my usable time. So still got a bunch of things done, but I feel like my to-do list is much bigger than my to-done list, you know?
Yeah, I like it to-done list.
I know, right?
Yeah, I can tell you're in the UK because you have a hat on.
I know, right? It's cold.
And I have like 4 or 5 layers on. So yeah, it's gone cold lately.
Yep.
Yeah, but you know, it's a good time of year. The season's
It is. It's a festive time, you know.
Yeah.
The UK is always fun in November and December, so I can accept the cold.
Yeah, good man. It's just
What
the
about
dark.
you? Yeah, it's just the dark and
I
the daylight savings we just had that is now making it dark in like it's 2:15 right now, and it's going to be dark in 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it's rubbish. But there you go.
Unacceptable.
But yeah, my week has been fine. Like my foot is getting better, which is good. I'm actually standing up again today, like for this recording. So, and doing enough.
Excellent.
I'm able to go fast enough that my Apple Watch thinks that it's exercise. So, so that's quite good. So yeah, generally getting better on that. So that's all good. And yeah, we've got a date for someone coming to do the last external dependency on the house
Awesome.
as well, which is 2 weeks time. So that is really good as well. So all in all, in general life, feeling good.
Excellent.
Yeah. Shall we go through the board?
Yes, let's do it. Oh man, there's a lot of stuff in the board. I've had a bunch of filters on all day today, and I just took them off, and there's a lot.
Yeah, well, mostly in the to-do, such as
mostly in the to-do.
But yeah, there we go. So build a location alarm clock app. Is your top project.
Yes.
Tell us what happened.
Shall. Okay, so last week I officially switched gears off of a fuzzy, undefined game that I want to build and that I still want to build to a more reasonable goal, a location-based alarm clock app where you are notified when you get close to a location rather than a time of day. And so my task for this past week was to create the mock-ups for that. And I basically got like my like quick and disgusting mock-ups done and not the like pretty ones that actually represent what I'd really want it to look like. But I think I have at least the ones that kind of convey the highest level of what an MVP would look like. So should I share my screen so I can show them off?
Just going to suggest exactly that.
Awesome. All right. Didn't take the time to name them well either. So I'll just go through them in order. They're pretty simple. So first screen is just kind of a simple startup screen, like for any alarm clock. Like the default screen will probably start off with a giant button. Maybe there'll be a little bit of text to describe what's going on, but for the most part, giant button. That one. Yeah. Pretty straightforward there. Next screen, let's see, location 2. Okay, so the next screen is a tiny bit fuzzier, but okay, so you create a new alarm. In this case, instead of picking a time, you're picking a location. So there will be some kind of map component with some ability to either search for an address, type an address in, move a pin on a map. In the 7 and 7 app, I've used Mapbox in the past, and I'm pretty happy with that. So I'll probably drop that component in. So this, in what you're looking at on the screen, in no way represents what it would really look like, but some kind of mappy bit that shows where you want to be alarmed. And then a couple of details, like I was thinking the main details you would have would be like the distance, so the geofence, and then there'd probably be some kind of a sound or type of notification. I didn't really flesh that one out. Just like whatever bits of the alarm you would configure that would be right below the map, and then you could hit set. And yeah, and so I described this briefly in one of my other cards, but I was thinking like the free version of this app would probably be more or less what you're looking at. You can create one alarm, pick a location, fix geofence distance, fixed settings, and you can, set it and it will work. And then if you do the in-app purchase to unlock the full app, you would get the ability to create, unlimited alarms and configure the geofence distance and whatever other settings, maybe notification sounds or the manner of notification. So let me close that one. And then the one I had thought of the least would be what happens after you've actually set the alarm. So in this screenshot, I kind of just modified what the other screenshot was, where it kind of still shows you your map location in some way, shape, or form, maybe the details you had picked, and then it'll tell you something like, hey, if the geofence is 10 kilometers, it can be like, hey, you're 200 kilometers away. Or if, and I don't know if the APIs like that can do the minutes quite like I did. In my screenshot, I wrote like, you are currently 22 minutes away from your destination. The alarm will sound in about 17 minutes. That might be too complicated a math. Like I can obviously do like a driving direction from your current location to the destination to get the total distance away. But I don't know if I would probably have to be tracking velocity in order to calculate like when the alarm would go off, rather than just have a geofence go off automatically.
Yeah, it's interesting. It might be just a case to start with. The minimum thing might be just you are 22 miles away or 22 kilometers away, and then you don't have to work out any kind of, because you're 22 minutes away is a driving distance, right? But you might be on a plane or a train or on foot or like, like you say, you'd have to kind of know your velocity.
Exactly. So like in theory, I like the idea that even though it's a distance-based alarm, you could have some kind of qualitative time measurement with it, but that also could be an incredibly advanced feature. So like you said, I'm perfectly happy just to be like, here's how far away you are. This will go off when you are quite a bit closer.
Yeah, I know that the modern iPhones can detect to some point. I don't know whether they would tell whether you're in a plane, but that they will know whether you're running, cycling, walking, driving. Like they have, if you give that permission, like from the motion sensor, it can pick that stuff up. So maybe that is possible. But I just don't know how accurate.
Yeah, and exactly. And for like an MVP, what I was really hoping is, and this is what I'll have to dive into next week, is that I can just set a geofence around that, destination point of whatever, 10 kilometers, 100 kilometers. And then, it kicks off a local notification at that point. And so I'm hoping that most of it is actually quite automated and there's not actually any analysis on my part. It's like, hey, register this point, register this geofence, and then, display a notification when it triggers.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. The only other thing I'd say which is not about the designs, but about what you were saying, was like, I would look into using the built-in Apple stuff.
Yes, totally.
It can do all this, and then, so I don't know Mapbox to say, but the kind of the Apple APIs for the, like, your current location and all that stuff, obviously I kind of have the same underpinnings as the APIs for presenting a map, and so you might find that you've got I guess it should be that the Mapbox stuff uses all the same stuff as well, but I think it'd be worth looking at the built-in stuff. It's all fairly straightforward, I think.
No, I think you're totally right. The only thing I would use Mapbox for, if required, is just the pretty visual UI so that the user can see where they are, pick a location, and save it. Right. But then I'm assuming like I would be accessing Apple's location API to set a geofence. So, and I assume I'm making this up as I go, but I'm assuming the geofence would like auto trigger a notification. That's like how it works.
It would trigger a call to a delegate.
Right. And then I could trigger a notification.
Yeah, exactly. You might be able to, I've never looked, there's a bunch of ways to set notifications, and it might be that you just set a notification based on location, but I can't remember.
Right, because it would be nice if I could do that, because there is, God, I forget where it is. Maybe in the Reminders app, the default Apple Reminders app, you can say like, remind me of something at a location, right? Like remind me when I get home to go buy cat food. And so it's like, that's kind of what I want to do. Like, I'm like, remind me, the user or whatever, when I get to location, but you don't even need to do anything. You just need to like literally trigger, beat, make yourself known,
That's it. And so I don't know I don't know off the top of my head, but it'd be worth looking at. There's some good stuff in there. And then, if you want any help as you're looking at the APIs, like, I mean, I'm not an expert, but I've done several stuff with those projects with those things. And I feel like I found some of the edges or whatever, or different stuff that it is all intuitive. But
Perfect.
Happy to help out if I can.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I will definitely use it, because the thing is, I'm hoping basically I can access all the Apple location APIs with like a latitude and longitude. Because if I use Mapbox to let the user pick a location, I can get the latitude and longitude, and then hopefully, based on current location and that information, I can, do whatever I need. And I mean, I might be naively hoping most of that stuff is pretty straightforward, but it should be pretty straightforward.
It should be pretty straightforward. And so I'm pretty sure that you can you can give it 2 sets of coordinates and it will tell you the distance between them. And it can just do that offline. And then you can do like location. So you can say, I'm at this coordinate, what is the name of that town, and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I would think it will give you everything that you would need. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, that basically bleeds into my task for next week, which is to more or less build the MVP of this. So the MVP I had written down in Trello is 1 alarm, fixed geofence. So based on those screenshots I showed, if I build an app that is basically a plus button and then pick a map location and then hit go, and then all it'll do is pop up a notification when you are within said geofence. And I think that I will call that a happy day, because then it's really just massaging that with a slightly nicer interface and a little bit more polish on the notification. But that's more or less the app itself.
Yeah, absolutely. The only other thing on those mockups is, will it be that you're going to start with just 1 alarm, just to clarify? Yeah. Okay. No, that's cool. Because I was thinking you would need like a list screen or something, but if
exactly.
Then that is fair.
Exactly. And I'm kind of thinking like, I'm even happy with the 1.0 not even having that in-app purchase I mentioned. Like if the 1.0 of this app is like the big plus button and the map and maybe a detail or two, and you hit set alarm, and then all there is the alarm either triggers or you hit cancel and go back to the first screen, and that's it. Keep it like as simple as possible while still being actually what you wanted it to be.
Yeah, that sounds good. Oh, while it's in my head, I've got another feature request for you on this one already.
Oh, do it.
Which is definitely not for the first one, but for some point, it would be cool if you made the notifications so that when it pops up and it says, oh, you're 10 kilometers away, and you know how you can do the kind of notifications with the different options?
Yes.
So it'd be cool if you could say, instead of like, remind me again in 10 minutes, you could say, remind me again when I'm 5 kilometers away or something.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think that would be nice.
I'm going to add that in. Okay. Lewis suggestion. What do you call that? Like an enhanced notification or like a feedback notification?
I can't remember what it is called technically. Let me.
Well, I'll just say add a notification with custom options. So if you're say 10 kilometers away, you can dismiss, or you can request to be re-notified when you're 5 kilometers away. Yeah, it'll be really interesting, because like something like this would totally work. Like I think the use case would work really well for like a public transit commute, like if you took a subway or a bus, especially for testing the default app. But like it's interesting because also on a plane, you would need the geofence to be much, much bigger.
Yeah, that's true. Um, yeah, but in some ways on a plane, I can see on a plane, the countdown thing would be really nice.
Yeah, you're right.
Um, yeah, yeah, cool. Okay, well, looking good anyway, and I'm looking forward to seeing the MVP. That will be,
Excellent.
yeah, will be
Yeah,
nice.
it will. I will do my best to make it look prettier than those pitiful mock-ups that I cobbled together as
Well,
quickly as I could.
I don't think it will need to. What would I do differently? Like, because it's all just kind of stock stuff, isn't it? So,
Well, exactly.
um,
That's the thing. Button,
yeah,
map, drop down,
yeah,
button. Like this is really like on one hand number of UI components.
yeah, yeah. And you know what? Oh, you can just tell me to be quiet, but this would be a great one to do with storyboards because I don't know. On the one hand, obviously that's giving you some extra learning, but on the other hand,
Right.
it's super basic. You've really got
Mm,
so your kind of ad screen will be super easy to do. You do that in like 10
right.
seconds, and then this screen there's a bit more to that, but yeah, might be worth spending like half an hour. If you can't do it in like half an hour or an hour, then you could just give up and
That's
start
true.
again.
All
But
right, I'll give it a ponder, see if I can get some auto layout rocking.
yeah, um, have you done like auto layout before in other languages or anything else like the strings and struts
It's
type
like,
stuff?
well, I mean, I've definitely done auto layout type things in other programming languages in the past with other frameworks, but I've really only flirted with it in Objective C and Swift, and I've
Yeah,
definitely never done it in a product I've launched because it always came down to I wanted to dynamically massage something somewhere, and since auto layout is all or nothing, it kind of meant like I always opted out.
yeah. Well, you can do that with auto layout and with interface builder. So what you can do is so you have outlets is what it's called. So say you had a label, and then what you
Right,
do is you drag an outlet into your code, and then you've got a property in your code which is say like a label, and then you do just as you would in code, you do label.text equals hello.
right,
But what you can also do is drag a constraint into the code, and so
yeah,
say you've got the height of something of the height of this map. You could set
right,
that. You could drag that constraint, and then under certain circumstances, you could say height. Height equals 20 instead of
right.
whatever it is. So you can do all that. But yeah, I don't know. It's something to think about because because this is the future, and they've got these crazy
Yeah.
new phones. Um,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
Well, maybe at some point we'll have to do a thing where, like, when we're in the same location or we do a screen share or something where, like, you can bring up one of your apps where you've done, storyboards and auto layouts, and I can see because, like, I've done stuff with constraints where I've tried to dive in, and for some reason, like, they just haven't quite stuck. And so I'm assuming what I really just need is like a real world example to be like, oh, look, here's my app. Here's how I do the constraints. Here's how you change
yeah.
them, and
And the
then
other thing that,
go
that
from
might
there.
be better since you did it last is that you can now debug the constraints in Xcode.
Oh, really?
So when you do a run, you can in the debug panel that you get on the left, there's like a little button in the top right, and so by default it's got like all the stacks or whatever it is, like what it shows by
Sure.
default, and you can click there, and then you can do like a view. You can change it to be like view layout or something like that, and that basically then
Okay.
freezes the app and then does like a kind of 3D rendering of all of the views and stuff. And so
That's
that
cool.
yeah, and it will show constraints in there, and it's not amazing, but it's like it helps. It's like infinitely better than nothing.
Right.
It makes it so much easier to look at. So um, yeah, yeah, that's worth looking
All
at.
right. Noted. Noted for the future. Um,
Excellent.
all right, cool. Let me pop back to Trello. All right, let's knock out your first one. The mailing list, trying to get to 5,000 mailing list subscribers in progress. What you been up to the
Yeah.
past week?
So my goal was, or things to do, were to implement iPhone 10 support,
Yes.
which I have done in all of the apps, and they're all released. I haven't. The only thing which I haven't done is iPhone 10 screenshots because I'm a bit afraid of those, and not even
Mm,
afraid. It's like I don't. I don't know. I'm not sure what to do on that. So I kind of want to see a little bit what other people do.
Gotcha.
Because obviously on all my screenshots, they're not really screenshots. It's all the marketing stuff. But are they going to show the notch in the screenshots, like in the App Store and all that stuff?
Huh.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's a good point.
They don't say. So maybe it would probably be better just to show traditional screenshots than nothing. I don't know, but I haven't done anything for yet anyway. I saw that that's what Carrot Weather were going to do. They're wait and see. And I'm like, Carrot, I'm going to follow your evil genius. And
yep, they are
do
always correct.
So yeah, other than that, it was all done. And
Wait. How did you see Carrot's iPhone and 10 screenshots?
I didn't. I just saw him say on Twitter that he wasn't doing anything yet.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So
Gotcha.
there's the developer is called Brian Mueller, and I follow him on Twitter. So I think it was him rather than it wasn't the Carrot persona.
Right, of course.
It was him. So yeah, he's a good one to follow, I think.
Yeah, he is. Cool.
And he, as a complete sidebar, he's totally self-taught, which I think is amazing. So
that is amazing.
He has no formal computer science or programming training. So yeah, interesting guy.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was to do the new A/B tests. or was to implement the new A/B tests. So I wanted to do, this was sort of overlapping with the iPhone 10 in that the images that I had didn't really work for, they had the wrong aspect ratio for iPhone 10. And so I made a couple of new images that are bigger, have more space to grow, and so they can just stick to the top. And as the screen gets taller, there's stuff underneath.
Okay, gotcha.
And so, so for context, I will share my screen. Share screen.
Share the screen.
The Trello. And so we had this one that we talked about last week, which we thought would do really well because it's all exercisey and it looks like it's kind of Nike or something.
Totally.
And then this one I actually didn't do the other two that we talked about this week. Jen was going through our stock images and found this, and we were kind of like, well, don't really like that image, but it is the kind of message or image that most weight loss things would use. So maybe they know something, and we'll see what they do. And also because this is all one color, it's kind of super flexible with what you can do with it.
Right. You mean as it grows a little bit in any direction, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. So she just stands on her own in a slightly off-white thing, and then she can go anywhere. So, so that was the one I did. I don't even believe that these are really her genes, but there you go. I'm kind of quite cynical about this stuff. So I just did those two. And the results have been pretty bad for both of them, to be honest.
Okay.
So it's hardly had any time. But the giant trousers have had a 5% rate, and the fitness one has had a 0.4% rate.
Whoa.
So this is much less data than the others. And this data, I have found that this does change over time, but that one is just crazily low. And so, yeah, there we go. So what I think my task for next week is going to be is to make my original woman facing sideways image, just to put that back in. I'll check this again before I do it, but I'm going to put that back in and I'll put that back in. And what I'll do for the big screens is I'm going to do like on Spotify where they do a blur of the image and put that, like they do it big and a blur. I don't know what exactly, but I'm going to do something with a blur as where it overflows or whatever. I'm just going to have a blur of the same image. So that may or may not look good, but it will be better than nothing. And it's going to be so few people on an iPhone 10, whereas I'm losing so many people by not having that picture there. So that's the thing. And then, so that's one task to do for this week. And then the other task I set myself is to start, is to come up with some variations, but around the wording. So basically the same image, but come up with keep testing and test different words. So instead of
Right.
whatever is there at the moment, it'll be hard, but try and come up with some different words and see if that makes any difference.
Yeah, like maybe one of them touts the fitness more, maybe one of them touts the health aspects more, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know exactly. There will be stuff that can be come up with if I put my mind to it. So,
Nice.
yeah, but I'm not going to release that. I might. We'll see. We'll see. What my goal is to release the single one that's working, and then design the others. But saying it now, it seems like I should be able to do both of those because it's not really much extra work by the time I've designed the extra words just to export the images and
Right.
the thing. Yeah, so that's the goal with that one.
Nice. And is I see in your to-do column, besides the iPhone 10 friendly image and the wording changes, you also had move everything to a new server and add
Oh
Facebook
yeah, yeah.
analytics.
Well done. So I had so a while back my server was hacked, and
Right.
I made a new server and everything. But it turns out that I didn't actually flick the switch and move. Like I moved everything over, but for whatever reason,
Right.
everything is still pointing to the old server. So um, I need to do that, and part of it is like my analytics is so where I'm checking these results. That is
Right.
coming from a server that's hosted on the old server. So actually, I was thinking I was going to take this opportunity to move to Facebook, but then that means that I
Nice.
would lose. I don't know. I'll work it out. I can just do the addition. So yeah, I'm going to move as part of this. I'm going to turn off my own analytics and move to
Right.
Facebook analytics, and yeah, not bother with doing my own analytics anymore.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and then so that's what those two things are. So the kind of moving everything to the new server, it's a bit tenuous, but it's kind of related. So this mailing list is for the blog. The blog needs to move onto the server, and I just really
Right.
need to get this done. So yeah, so that's what those ones are.
Fair enough. So do you think you're going to get all 4 of those tasks done in the next week?
I think so. So like the new server one is the fuzziest one because
Of course.
it should be all fine because the new server is ready to go. But then that's like the kind of thing that I do least often, and so it's the most
Right.
something unexpected to happen. And then yeah, so that's that one. But then the others is mostly stuff in Sketch. So I guess
Right.
the one with Facebook Analytics, like that should be quick as well. Like I've mentioned before, I've got like a proxy because I've changed analytics provider several times. I've actually got my own kind of
Right.
proxy wrapper around the analytics, so I shouldn't need to change
Nice.
everywhere in the code. So
That's cool. And I can also share where I've done it because one, Facebook has pretty decent setup guides, but you also have to go to the right page because there's like, I don't know, infinite number of setup guides depending on which kind of ad you're going to target or which kind of setup. And then there's just one that's like, look, I want Facebook in my app so I can do in my own analytics. And you're
yeah,
right, like since you have your own wrapper, once you get that nice little delicate intro initialization part done, it's probably just firing custom events.
yeah. So I'm fairly confident with that. I can't remember whether I've used Facebook Analytics or not. I definitely have done other Facebook integration in the past. So
Nice.
we'll see. But I'm fairly confident that should be quick. And then the other stuff is
Cool.
just stuff in Sketch. So should be
Right.
fine.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's that for the mailing list. Tell me
Perfect.
about $10 a day in the App Store. So last week
Yes.
there was fluctuations, there was strangeness afoot in the analytics.
Yes. So to recap the strangeness, basically earlier, like a month ago, my downloads spiked by an order of magnitude and held for 2 or 3 weeks, even though the number of in-app purchases didn't change at all. And then about 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I noticed my in-app purchases going up relative to app downloads. And it was very strange. It was as if like I experienced a spike in downloads, but not revenue. And then that went back to normal and then experienced a spike in revenue. And what I wanted to do last week was kind of look at both of those and see, okay, does the increase, assuming the downloads was some kind of an outlier, you and I had talked about like Chinese server farms trying to mine downloads or something weird like that. It seems like overall, like there is a definite measured increase in my number of in-app purchases, which is great. And I think it does loosely correspond to the changes I made in the search ads. Like it's possible that I was creating my own kind of bottleneck by like capping the search ads at too small a daily cap, because I was limiting it to like a US$ a day in advertising. And it might have been just how like you saw when you did your ads, like when you have like 130 ad impressions and you're only getting 6 versus 1,500 ad impressions when you get, a better sample size. It might have been basically the same thing. Let me see if I can, let me share my screen real quick and I'll show this one sidebar thing. So this is, I was just quickly going into Piper and doing an in-app purchase versus downloads. And so you can see like, I don't know what the hell was going on in August, but then like everything was pretty low, like not too many in-app purchases per app unit. And then right around the end of September, a pretty massive sustained spike. And it's fluctuated week over week, but it's definitely higher. And I think that more or less corresponds to when I made the series of different search ad changes.
And so the kind of September, this is the reason that ratio is low is because you had all the Chinese downloads, right? So where it's close to zero.
Exactly. Like I think especially at the, yeah, exactly. It's super weird. Yeah. Like I think everything up until about the beginning of October was completely screwed up due to too many downloads. And then everything from October on, I think is more normal, but reflects more of, I don't know, more of like a natural progression. Like, let me see if I can do like, I was going to see if I could do like a custom view that was like 6 months or something, but the little mini zoom window was like right on my thing. Okay, let's see. What if I just went back to like May 1st to October 30th? Let me see what it looks like. Dude, okay. I don't even know. Like looking at all of my, yeah. I'm going to need like to hire a person to just tell me how to read my own app stats.
Yeah, I think you just gotta, I think the way I try and do it is like just to look for specific questions. So like write down a specific question and then just try and look at it from all different angles and try and come at it.
Yeah. But yeah, the other thing is like, wow. And you can see like Takora was even more drastic because it had even larger number of downloads than Piper did and corresponding less in-app purchases. So like it was basically hovering at 0 the whole time. There was that massive download spike and then back to normal, back to better.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Like 50% or whatever.
Yeah.
That is right. So that's
yeah.
Numbers.
Yeah, decent numbers. I don't know, man. It's weird. I feel like I'm going to have to, like, I definitely have looked at it. I'm not really happy with, I don't have any great answers right now. So I don't know. I feel like I'm going to have to like talk to someone who specializes in app content marketing.
Okay. And did you look at App Annie and see whether you could chart your kind of profit rather than just pure margin?
Right. Yeah, I did take a peek at App Annie and honestly just looked like a bit much for me at that exact moment. So I was just going to take advantage of I don't know what I was going to say there. I was basically just going to look at it a week later. So I was going to look at App Annie this week when I felt like I had more bandwidth to really look at it rather than trying to like quickly go in and get some analytics. But yeah, I think you're right. I think a few things I need to do are to chart the start and the finish of the like mega downloads, just so I know where it is as like an outlier. And then if I can go back in our old podcasts and look in search ads and see where I made drastic changes to my search ad campaigns, and then chart against those against in-app purchases and see, is it a linear relationship? Is it just coincidental? Like, is, hopefully spending more on ad money has meant more downloads, and hopefully more than an equal number of increase. So hopefully I didn't just add $5 more in ad downloads to make $5 more. Hopefully I made $10.
Yeah, well, you can definitely get that really quickly in App Annie, and that was
Awesome.
how I was doing it. So yeah, because I found that my downloads did go up and my revenue, but I didn't make any extra profit from it, and that's why I stopped doing the ads. So
right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll add a comment for myself for that. So yeah, I think for next week for me, it's kind of continuing that. Like, I think, like you said, really lock down specific data points that answer questions that I have. Because I guess my questions are really, is the money that I'm spending on search ads worth it? And if so, how worth it? So, and I guess like I'll make my goal for the next week to try to use App Annie and answer that question. Like, just like, what is the relationship between the money I am pumping into advertising versus, revenue back in my pocket?
Yeah. And they have a chart especially for that. It's like margin or something like that.
Excellent.
But they definitely have a chart where they calculate your thing. Let me just see, because
go App Annie.
It's on the homepage. So gross margin is called gross margin.
Gross margin.
So for me, my gross margin is the same as my revenue, because I'm not spending any money on acquisition. But because you're spending money, it will kind of do the sums and work it out for you.
Marvelous.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, let's hope a week from now, after using that, I have far more interesting analytics to report. Hopefully positive ones, but honestly, I would rather just have real answers, even if they're negative ones. Like, you are actually spending 20% more than you're bringing in.
Yeah. Maybe we should go through this. I think I said this before together at some. I'm due another kind of deep dive into my analytics, because I haven't really looked at anything for ages, and so if anything, I'm looking at it less than I used to look at it every day. And for the last few weeks, I haven't really done that. So just like the headline numbers.
Exactly.
So, yeah. I need to think about that.
It's the thing I try to keep in mind too is like prioritizing my time. Like, I realize that this is important. Like, half of your app is building it and half of your app is marketing it. But since I don't get any joy or pleasure out of really understanding the analytics or marketing in a different ways, I'm also aware of the fact that like I'm doing it kind of like, flossing. Like, it's like a habit I know I need to have, but if at any point any human comes along that can do it for me, I might do that. So I wonder if this might be too advanced for just like a generic VA to handle. But yeah, I feel like I need to go among our like 7 and 7 nomad audience and find anyone who does content marketing and be like, hey, do you do app marketing? If not, do you want to try?
Yeah, I feel like there would be an advantage to you understanding it before handing it off, though. Like, I don't know. I mean, certainly, if you found someone who was a marketing expert, then that would be really great. I don't think I would. I don't know. I don't think I would. There's a point where I would have taken on a person who didn't have an app marketing background, but I don't think I would do that now, just because I feel like the App Store is such a weird beast.
It is.
And I've spoken to like SEO guys, and they're like, "Oh, you should just have it so that you'll go into your app and then downloading it hundreds of times." And it's like, well, maybe I should, but this is where you need server farms in China for and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. It's interesting stuff to think about, certainly. And I think I would counsel not being afraid of it, like, or, not afraid, but you know what I mean? Like,
no, totally. I mean, I think that's it. I don't think I'm afraid of it. I mean, I realize it's kind of an avalanche of information, right? Like a ton of
Yeah,
metrics. And so without a handy guide to maybe like cut through the filters, it's a little hard to take in all at once. But it's also just like, I have enough time management issues just trying to create stuff that I'm intentionally trying not to add more to my plate that I know would be like a pit of new
yeah,
tasks. But you're right. It's weird because I also feel like with my apps, it's like I don't have an as established audiences as you do with say Progress or World Time. And so I'm also kind of thinking of it more like one-offs. Like my time would be better spent churning out more apps, even if I'm kind of doing it in an inefficient manner. Like say, for example, Piper is making $10 a day, but with proper maintenance and management, it could be making $20 a day. Well, okay, in
yeah,
the time it takes me to get from 10 to 20, can I build 3 apps that also make $10 a day? Because then my time is actually better spent, at least for an initial time period, just building more apps and then optimizing them.
yeah. I think the counter argument to that is that for me, the most I've ever done to increase my downloads is by doing App Store optimization. That has been like the biggest win, because you kind of
Right.
obviously got a funnel, and you kind of go from like people searching to people downloading to people buying,
Right.
that kind of flow. And like increasing, it's kind of, you need to optimize every stage, right? But this bit at the
Yeah.
beginning, this is like optimizing how many people buy, like that's a lot of work. Whereas optimizing your search words, that's like a few hours work. And so like, and just reviewing that every so often, so you can get a lot more
Sure.
bang for buck to start with at this end, just because you don't have to do any coding, and you're not going to break anything.
Yeah. It almost makes it seem like what I should do is chunk out all the tasks. Like, okay, say just at a high level with App Store optimization, there's like 40 different elements you can edit, right? And each one takes 30 minutes or less. If I break it all up and just say, hey, every 3 months, I'm going to tackle one of these, and then you just
Yeah,
have it charted on a line. So like maybe every Thursday I take 30 minutes and I go through, number 27, and then next month is number 28. And then, like keeping like something like that, so like I'm always like refreshing my keywords or titles or something, but it's always one task. So it's not go in and optimize the whole suite.
yeah, yeah. I'd say that's a good idea. That's probably what I should be doing.
Yeah.
I think stuff like that a lot. Like I've been conscious that I haven't done any of that stuff for quite a while. So,
Yeah.
yeah, got to come back
Well,
to it.
and what I had put was that which was to, I need to generate new app screenshots. And one of them was, oh yeah, you had mentioned, not doing iPhone 10 yet. So I wanted to generate new app screenshots, including the 10, but I guess I'll just for now generate for the 8 and 8 Plus. And then I had wanted to do video previews. And I think that'll be a big one. Like if I have video previews, because I actually noticed in the App Store app now, it'll start playing the video like an animated GIF when you're
Mm,
scrolling through. So now it seems more important than ever to have like a little visual accoutrement for each app. So I wonder if just even getting video previews, fresh screenshots, and then you had had the recommendation a few weeks or months ago to swap out the free countries in Piper so that I wasn't giving away the one people were most likely to buy. If I just did
yeah,
those 3 things, which I have in my list for the next 2 weeks, if that would
yeah,
actually be a good optimization of that part of the kind of the funnel or the process.
yeah. I definitely need to do videos for Progress. Like I should not have. I kind of, yeah. I can
Yeah.
remember why I stopped doing it. It was because I got some screens in landscape and some screens in portrait, but it's just I just need to skip the. I don't know. Just need to get over it, or do something. Need to do something, because, like you say, those videos really stand out when you're scrolling through. So
I really noticed that. Like I was installing an update to Feedly or something, and there was Flipboard or one of the other competitors, and it had its little app preview, animating. And it was really compelling. Even for the 8 seconds I was like looking at the screen, like I was more compelled to, tap up to that. And I don't even want that app. And I'm, a developer. Like I am hopefully more immune than most to that. And so if I'm like, ooh, click, a regular person might be very likely to click.
Yeah. And no, it's true. Exactly. It just gives you that extra bit of attention.
Yep.
All right. Good stuff.
All right.
So,
cool.
Yeah. So you're set for your stuff for next week. So is it
set.
achievable? So you've got like a bunch of different things in there.
Yeah, the only two I set time limits for next week were to try to record the video previews and then maybe generate new app screenshots, which may or may not make sense right now until maybe the 10 is available. So I'll probably focus primarily on the video previews since that'll be the biggest time suck, but also the most valuable. And then I'll consider the other one a bonus if I have time.
Sure. Okay. Good call.
All right. Let's move on to your second one. We have the tip jar code.
Yeah, so this is a good one to discuss because I wanted to go through it with you. So for my thing to do for last week was to store the purchases in default and show the total UI, and I got all of that done. I should probably do some more testing, but I'm pretty happy that it was working, and it's kind of available outside of the component, as it were. So in the main app, you can check how much has been tipped, so that you can could enable or disable features based on whether a tip has been given. So that is good, and I'm pleased with that. One thing, from kind of follow up from last week, you remember we were talking about whether to load the prices during the app delegate kind of on startup or whatever. And I checked with what pCalc does, and what they do is, or what he does is basically block. He loads that, you open the tip jar and it shows a spinner and says contacting App Store. And then once it's done that, then it shows all the tip jar screen. So, which makes sense. I don't know whether that's better or worse than the way I've done it, which is just to load but
honestly, I'm gonna call foul on that one, because that's lazy loading, right? I mean, I did that. I mean, I actually do that in Piper before we ever thought about all this fancy preloading, right? Like you go to load your store page and you get the information before you load your store page. But like you have the benefit, like they're never gonna open your app and go directly to that page. Like even if it's like 4 seconds, that's enough time to probably retrieve and get that tiny piece of information so that it's a more seamless experience.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's chuck that in for this week then. So,
sure. I mean, I realize I'm being a bit of a butt about it, but I like the idea that like if I opened up, say, like Progress or World Time and I tap tip jar, if the price was already ready because it had been a second, like that makes it seem like it's just a smooth, like I'm more likely to, give you money because I'm not waiting.
Yeah, I'd say you're right. So, yeah, let's get that done. So I'm just going to do that.
Do it. Yeah, I mean, like we talked, I think last week about a lot of the problems with that, right? Like there's race conditions you have to be careful of. You still have to check that the operation is going on. Can it go asynchronously? And then say it's in progress when someone opens the tip jar. Can your tip jar still, chill for a second until it shows it? And so it is definitely more complicated behind the scenes, but I think it's one of those examples of, hiding the plumbing to make the UI seem more magical.
Yeah, I'd say you're right. And I have dealt with that complexity, albeit partly with third-party libraries before. Right. So I kind of know what the flow of that needs to be for it to be robust. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's do it right if I'm going to do it. So yeah. Exactly. Cool. And then my other things to do next on that, it was basically just so I might actually just leave the other stuff and do this preloading this week. Yeah, why not? Yeah, so I'm just gonna because like the preloading in a beautiful world might only take you one afternoon and everything works, but then like you could spend 3 days testing edge cases. Yeah, so I'll just set this for the 6th. Okay, well that was easy then. So nice. Yeah, that's it. So that's that for the tip jar. Let us move on to Patreon.
Let's do it. Okay, so I mentioned last week that after 7 and 7 and the 7 and 7 Nomad House, I had actually gotten quite a bit new backers to our Patreon just by literally like shaking hands, kissing
Yeah.
babies. And so kind of came to the realization that like it is a more lucrative approach to approach people that know you, that are already invested in your well-being, rather than trying to get strangers, or at least at this stage in the process when you're trying to go from like 10 to 20, 20 to 30, it's better to mine a personal network. And then when you want to go from 30 to 300, that's when you can do the massively open advertising. So my task for the past week was basically reach out to anyone in 7 and 7 or at the Nomad House who I hadn't already gotten basically as a Patreon backer. And I did a little bit of that. I kind of got a little bit of my pitch down and like was looking, and I'm like, okay, like where do I talk to this person? Okay, I talk on Facebook Messenger. Like, what's the correct pitch? And honestly, I got a little sidetracked where I felt like it would be just a little too scammy. And I know our friend Beck would have gotten mad at me, and she would have been like, don't be a jackass. Just like fucking talk to them and be like, back me on Patreon for $1. Do it right now. And I wussed out a little bit. So I think like what my goal for the next week is like kind of maybe a little more clinically, like write it out and see like, would it make sense to do public posts, say on Twitter and Facebook, and then tag those people, or to do literally direct outreach? Like, hey, Lewis, I know we talked at the Nomad House about my apps. It'd be awesome if you could back me for $1.
Yeah, my opinion for what it's worth would be to reach out to people in private,
Yeah.
rather than tagging them. I don't know why, it just feels, I don't know, I feel like that's what I would do, because if you're kind of asking people for money in public has seemed something that I can't put my finger on that's not quite right about that. I guess it's kind of like you're pressuring them a little bit.
No, I think you're right.
Um,
No, exactly. And I think you're right. Like originally that was actually kind of the goal was, post about it publicly and be like, hey, do this because like, otherwise you'll feel guilty if you don't do it. But you're right. Like that's kind of a vinegar approach. You need more of a honey approach. Like if I write to people in private, also like, what's $1? If I write to someone in private and I'm like, hey, it would actually help me out quite a bit if you could back me for $1. Most people would probably, I mean, I would do it. Like if you came to me and said, hey, I started a new Patreon for my something, I'd be like, great, here you go.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, you gotta try then. So that's the way to think about it is,
yeah.
But
see, this is the thing where I have to talk it out, right? Because like I'm sitting here by myself. It's like, 1 a.m. and I'm like, I can't just write to people and demand things, but of course you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're not demanding things. You're asking for things.
Right. It's more like I'm asking for support, but in a very, very small amount so that it is it's like going over to a metaphorical neighbor and asking for like an egg, right? You're not asking someone to like give you something massive.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So,
excellent.
so I guess, so that's really that'll be my next week. And honestly, like I will cautiously say I'll have that achieved next week, but I haven't gone back and looked through, but I mean, we're talking about like upwards of 80 to 90 people, even though I have probably already talked to or gotten in the app collective half of them, that still could be like 20 to 40 messages to send. So I'm not going to guarantee that I have it done for next week, but I will target getting it done.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, do one and take it from there. That's the thing to do.
Yep. You're right. Like it's like 1 foot forward, right? Like just one at a time. Exactly. Well, also like once I write the first one, like it can be mostly a template. Like I can just write the message and change around some of the details.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And once you've sent the first one, sending the others will be easier as well.
Exactly. And especially like if I send the first couple and I get a backer or two, that gives you the momentum to be like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right. And then that brings us to our final one, the Nomad Tracker.
Yeah, Nomad Tracker. So my goal was to write up all the feedback from all the wonderful 7 and 7 attendees.
Yeah.
And so of course I made a mind map.
I see it.
We can do it. I'll do a quick screen share.
Mind map.
Double tap. Yeah, so I'm not going to read them all out or anything. That's really big, isn't it?
Yeah, you kind of have to. Oh, weird. Yours says download. When I click on it, mine will say open in new tab.
This.
If you
I
actually, if you just click on the image, like right there, it might do it correctly.
It was because I was in the Trello app and not in.
Oh, gotcha.
So if I do that, now I've got it.
There you go.
I'll just zoom out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it's still gigantic, but better.
So it kind of breaks into kind of dashboard stuff, like where have you been, stuff like that. And then notifications for when you're in a new place. So, either automatically posting on social or sharing to your friends. And then a kind of extension of those two is like a web profile, like an online thing. So you've got a URL, like a sort of like a Nomad business card or something like that.
Right.
And then I haven't put on here, but kind of coming into all of it is kind of a social aspect to that. So that was another big piece that people were interested in. It kind of gets very complicated. I have put it in here.
It does. I mean, I kind of feel like the Nomad Tracker had like kind of two possible skins, right? There was the solo aspect where it tracks you and you get visualizations or information or something like that, but it's purely like, it's like your fitness tracker on your Apple Watch, like it's mostly just for you, for the benefit of you. And then the entire other side of the coin is like the social aspect of, okay, are you sharing that with others? Are they sharing it with you? Are you doing travel planning? Are you sharing tips? And I feel like that second one like really expands into that can balloon in scope like really fast.
Yeah, exactly. And and so there was that, and then there's another thing was like the future planning, which is a really interesting one to think about. So like, where are people going to be or considering being, and trying to do that, which I think is a really cool problem to try and solve. But I don't know, that needs a lot of thought. That's more difficult than you think. I think kind of people.
I agree.
Getting people to say online where they're thinking about being in the future is kind of onerous and probably not very accurate.
Right. And it's kind of the same reason like I stopped using TripIt and a bunch of other services in the past, where like it gets old having to constantly write down what you're thinking about doing.
Yeah, exactly. And so if there was a really nice way of doing that, then maybe that would be cool. But otherwise, yeah. So that's
Exactly.
so my summary of all of this is like the kind of dashboard stuff is the key, is kind of core to all of it anyway, I think. So that is kind of the core thing. And so
Cool.
the next thing to work on is just getting some of this data together for the dashboard. And so my next task is, what did I write up exactly? Is to write an algorithm which will work out which city you're in on a given day. That's not very well worded, so I need to think about it a little bit more. But basically, I need to be able to have two tables, one which is city and one which is country, and each day it needs to be able to kind of fill that table at the end of the day, or after some. Maybe it's just when you go into the app, but when you go into the app, it will work out where you've been since you last opened the app. And so my kind of tasks are to think about kind of edge cases and stuff like that. Like, what do you do on a day when you change country and stuff like that?
You mean if there could only be one?
Yeah, well, or can there be two? How does it work on a day where did you spend if you fly from London to New York, did you spend the day in London or the day in New York? Like, did you spend 10 days in London and 10 days in New York, or 9 days in London? And it doesn't really matter. It just has to has to be thought out. And my
Well, you could always just make something up, right? Like when it strikes, say, midnight local time to your phone, that's where you are. So, like, for instance, a week ago, I went from Valencia to Manchester. So the day before I flew, the day before I flew Valencia, the day after I flew Manchester, that's easy. And honestly, it doesn't really matter which one of those it is on the travel day, but it would probably be, since I ended the day in Manchester, it'd be Manchester.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Is like it will be basically the last recorded location on the day will probably be where it goes from. So and then from a visa perspective, certainly from a visa perspective, which is one potential use case for this, it's when you arrive that's important, isn't it? So if you arrive halfway through the day, that's still a full day as far as your visa is concerned, isn't it? So
right.
I think that's what I'll do. But I don't know whether there'll be any other edge cases, but I want to think that through and then get something started just to do that bit, so it can start to fill those two tables each time the app is run.
Makes sense. But also accounting for visas or Schengen is super easy because on the entry side, it's inclusive, right? If you end the day in the place, it doesn't matter if you got to, like you said, it doesn't matter if you got there at 11:30, still counts. And then when you leave, it's kind of, well, actually, I guess when you leave, it's also inclusive, right? It's inclusive on both ends. So it's kind of really easy.
It is. And so, so I think that'll be fine as long as I take
air
it.
Quote.
Yeah, I think it's easy. Yeah, I have to do it, like we say, from the last place you were, that's where your whole day was. And then things like, if I don't know how, it's a good reason or an advantage of having a lot of beta testers is like sometimes if you get an address back, is it going to change city? Like if you've got 4 levels of address, like
right,
my parents' address would be I don't want to say it, but it would be house name, road name, village name, town name, county name, and so on. So will that always be consistent? If you move around different parts of Bangkok, will you be in a different city? And so just thinking about maybe having something to make sure that you have to travel a certain distance before you're in a new city, or I don't know. That's one to think about as well. But shouldn't be difficult. I don't think. It's just to be thought of. But I'm still confident that with like half a day to a day, I can think it through, and then all I've got to do is find the last entry and compare it to the day before. So it shouldn't be too tricky.
Totally. And I mean, worst case, it's still correct in aggregate. Like, I think if you just kept it simple, like you said, and just, it was like the last data point from the last moment in the day, even if it's a little wrong, it's not going to be wrong on the week level, No.
And I think it'll be fine. I just want it to be as accurate as possible.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so like I've got one of the apps that I was looking at that's sort of the semi-competitors. And it's like I go 6 miles out of town and it sends me a notification saying, how was your trip to the other place? Like, or how was the trip to the place that you've just left? And so, and so I kind of want to be a bit better than that if I can.
Well, yeah. And actually I noticed Facebook, I mean, they're not wrong, but okay. So, yesterday I traveled basically from the Peak District to London. And, so Peak District to Manchester Airport, Manchester to the city, where the main train station was, to Euston in London, over here to where I'm in Angel and Islington now. And at least 4 times I remember Facebook was like, welcome to Warburton. Tell your friends you're here. And it would pick like the local town I was passing on the train or in one of the things. And really, like, I would have accepted Manchester and London, like that would be like the 2.
Yeah, exactly. So, and my kind of approach to all that stuff is going to be much less kind of in your face, at least to start with. So I kind of want it to be when you go into the app, or I don't know, maybe you get a weekly summary or something like that. And certainly not for changing
So
policies.
hold on. So is the problem with the algorithm is the app is tracking cell tower changes, right? So like on the day I said I go to Manchester, from Manchester to London, whole bunch of cell tower changes, and that's in one table, right? Like a whole bunch of like coordinates.
Yeah,
And then you have a whole other table that has city and country so that you can be like for high level tracking, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that we can say, and that will just be extrapolated from the low level
Got
table.
it. Okay, so in
I
a
won't do that in
way,
real time, I don't think.
right, right. So in a way, it's not like the information of where I actually went is ever lost. It's more just you're trying to be clever about surfacing intelligent information about where I've been.
Yeah, basically don't want to have to work out where you've been every day for the last 5 years every time you open
That
the
makes
app. Like,
sense. That makes sense.
so yeah. So that's it. I don't know whether that's a good way of doing it or not, but I think it is.
Yeah.
So
Well, you know what I just realized? Okay, and this is far too complicated. But okay, so say you mentally plot where you went in a day, right? And you have all the data points from all the cell tower changes. Realistically, if it's a travel day, that will be a line, right? Like you went from A to B. Maybe it's a curve, maybe there's a bit, but in general, like you went forward. Whereas say you're just tootling around Bangkok, having a good holiday, that would be more circuitous, maybe even circling back on itself. And I wonder if you could somehow do path identification to be like, oh, you definitely went from one place to another place today, so I'll use where you ended up. And in the other case, you're like, oh, you just went around today, so I'm going to use where you started, like something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think for the city, it should, I think it'll be fine. I think using the last point of the day is simple and makes sense.
Well, like, for example, yesterday I started in Manchester, I ended in London. So your app should end me in London, but
Exactly.
say in a week I go down to Greenwich for the afternoon and then come back, it should keep me in London then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you go for the day,
Exactly.
To Greenwich, yeah.
But like, say I went to Greenwich and I didn't come back to London till 1 a.m. If your app was being kind of on the dumb side, it might be like, oh, you're in Greenwich now.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
And I don't know what to do with that.
No, me neither. Let me put that in as an edge case. Where did I?
Yeah.
So
because that's where I was saying because that's where I was saying circuitous, but you're right. Like the whole point is if I went from the city I'm in to somewhere else back to where I started, the problem is solved itself. You're still in the right place at the end of the day. But what if you're like still out? Yeah.
Yeah. So say I go from London to Oxford.
Yeah, exactly. Oxford might be a better example.
But don't get back till after midnight.
Yep. And it's almost like, yeah.
I mean, I guess you could argue then, really, you've been to Oxford for the day.
It's true.
And as long as I guess where it's really complicated is, I mean, if you change countries, because as long as it keeps the country right, that's okay. If you drive from France to Belgium and then come back.
Or actually, what about a worse example? So like, Shenyang applies to me. So what if I'm in London, I fly to Paris, which is a really fast flight in the morning, hang out in Paris all day, but then I have a 12:30 a.m. flight back to London. You're going to think I'm still, like if you were doing Shenyang tracking for me, it would actually get off. And I realize that's a ridiculous edge case. That's not going to be likely.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. So maybe the thing is to allow some kind of manual override. So you just try and not make it too clever, but just allow people to. So for the high level data, you allow people to edit and say, oh, well, actually, I was in London for the whole time.
Actually, yeah. You know what you could do? It could be like spam filters do this and other things with like a level of confidence. So if your algorithm is like, dude, I know exactly where you are, don't worry about it. But then if you're like, oh man, did you come back? Did you go? You could just be like, hey, I think you're either here or here. Which is it, friend?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And so I certainly see that as being a future-y kind of a thing. And it's
Yeah.
probably something to think about, is to allow people to send me their location data so that I can then do tests on that, or, analyze it and say, yeah, try and work out what's
Well,
happening.
you can always use me as a guinea pig. I move no worse than every couple of months, so you'd get pretty decent data.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, yeah, that would be great. And that's the thing is, you need the edge cases you hardly ever do, right? Or relatively hardly ever do. That's the thing, especially with something like this. So
Yeah.
where you're doing something once every few weeks, you kind of get, and it's going to be a pain to test as well.
Yeah.
I might have to finally look at this unit testing stuff that I've been ignoring for so
What? No,
long.
not unit testing. The worst.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I buy into it on paper, but maybe for something like this, because I can't just take my phone to somewhere else and then come back, or yeah, need to have a think.
Yeah.
So I might add
Yeah.
that as a thing as well. Consider unit testing.
Or honestly, the other thing is, even you're keeping the minute data, so you do know where the person has been, but say you just can't figure out where they were today. Maybe you don't even keep that information. That maybe you have an empty value for that day.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
There's solutions to all of it, but you can kind of start to see where it's more
Yeah.
complicated. But it's all good fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely.
yeah, it's what we do.
Nice. It is what we do. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think the solution you would end up with really just depends on what you would want to do with that information, and whether you want false positives or false negatives.
Yeah, that's true. Cool. All right.
Awesome.
Good stuff. This has been excellent. So I've got one other card on here, which is just to.
Okay.
I should have done it before, but it was I got a bunch of email addresses, or a handful of email addresses from the meetup, so to add those as beta testers. So
nice.
I'll get that done next week.
Easy peasy there.
Well, this week. Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's it.
Good week.
Yeah, exactly. Good week indeed. And we'll see everyone next week. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, then please give us a like or a subscribe below, and let us know what you think in the comments. And we'll see you next week.